the Thomas and Martha Wayne death in that is so melodramatic.
Yes.
With the pearls hitting the floor.
Let the pearls hit the floor.
Motion. That to me is like, if you're gonna do it that way.
It is time, Rosie, to rank our top 5 Batman adaptations, whatever that means to you. Taking the comics, putting them on TV, putting them in the movies, whatever the case may be. Our top 5. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Oh, gosh. Okay, who should go first? I'll go first.
Okay.
My number 1 Batman adaptation is, gosh, I'm going to have to say The Dark Knight. I just think that Heath Ledger is electric in the movie. He obviously redefined the Joker for a whole generation of movie fans, influenced the way the Joker was depicted in DC Comics after that. It turned into a scarred, mauled mess, and in fact, like every comics incarnation of the Joker has in some way been impacted by Heath Ledger's incredible performance. It's my favorite Batman movie. I was blown away watching it. I remember vividly when they released, like, I think it was like the first 5 minutes of the heist portion, the first 5 minutes of the movie online with the Joker robbing the mafia bank and then double-crossing all of the mobsters. And I was just like, man, I cannot wait for this movie. I vividly remember working as a waiter when Batman Begins came out, and we were doing a gig at the museum, at the Philadelphia Museum, and this guy who I was working with was just like, Batman Begins, man, that's it. It changed everything about what we know about Batman and the movie. He just could not stop talking about it. And then I saw it and I was like, yeah, this is good. And then The Dark Knight came out and I was blown away. It really, it felt like a moment in time at the time also, with the kind of like security versus freedom conversation that was also happening in the broader culture. But I just loved it. I still love the movie. Your thoughts?
You know, it's one of the, it's such an unbelievable cultural touchstone. And that came out in 2008, the same year that Iron Man came out. And that is just like an unbelievable kind of changing point for how superheroes and cinema would interact. That I am going to shock a lot of people. None of the Nolan movies are actually in my top 5, but I'm really glad. I'm really glad you brought it up, because that is the movie. That's like the movie that changed the way that Hollywood saw superheroes.
That is the only Nolan Batman, spoiler alert, that is in my top 5. Rosie, who's your number 1 Batman movie?
So this actually changed. I ranked this like a week ago and it was different, but mine changes a lot. Right now I'm back to the classic Batman 89.
Okay.
That's definitely, that's it for me. Like my earliest memory of like being a 2-year-old and sitting in my uncle's house. He lived in this high rise, and I remember I was really high up looking out the window, and in the reflection of the window I could see the scene where the Joker falls in the acid, and it felt so scary. And that is like the earliest memory I have. That's a movie that's really defined my love of cinema. I love Robert Pattinson's Batman so much, so I'm definitely going in between on my faves at the moment. But Keaton is brilliant. The suit, that design of the yellow Batman logo,
it was really, really
with
cool.
The black on top, that you would never believe it, but that didn't exist until that movie. It seems so synonymous, but that was a branding thing, So I think that was incredible. That was another turning point for the space of fandom and comic books in cinema. It became the biggest movie of all time at the time. It was, I love that movie so much. I rewatch it. Jack Nicholson, obviously, didn't even get into that. I quote it all the time. Incredible stunt work. Philip Tan, who is just like an absolute stunt icon. He's in that movie. He was the stunt coordinator on that movie. The Joker gang, the jackets they have, I still live to own one of those. Like, I think it's one of the coolest movies ever made. Like, when I watch it, I feel like this is so cool.
Absolutely. And I remember as a kid, just like the merch being everywhere.
Yes.
Like just Batman hats, Batman shirts, Batman stuff, Batman. It was huge, and it was one of those movies that like people saw 2 and 3 and 4 times in the theater. I still love it. It's on my top 5 list, and in fact, we'll get to that in a second. But my second movie is God. Fuck it. Okay, I'm changing it. My number 2 is 1989 Batman. It's great. It's just great. Nicholson is absolutely incredible. Michael Keaton, I recall at the time, Keaton was known as a comedic actor at the time. I think he was coming off of Beetlejuice, which was a very broad, sinister, but in a funny, humorous way kind of character. There was a lot of doubt that he could play Bruce Wayne / Batman, and he did it. He has a real intensity in the eyes. I love his Bruce Wayne in a lot of ways, other than Pattinson. In a lot of ways, Michael Keaton is the most compelling Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
Bruce Wayne.
He is, and also he laid the path for the Pattinson Bruce Wayne, because one of the best moments in that movie, is when he's like,
now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
He's a crazy Bruce Wayne. He knows that he is aware. He's aware of how weird it is to dress up as a bat to scare people. And like you said, the intensity in his eyes. I love his Bruce Wayne. I love the black turtleneck, which is now so synonymous with Batman.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's such a great Bruce Wayne and a great Batman.
Yeah, he had an ability to be very, very still and then all of a sudden explode with energy that was really, really compelling. And then when he doesn't do it a lot, but there are like funny moments in his Batman films, and he just fully has the arsenal of comedic tools to go to that place too. I absolutely love it. Who's your number 2?
My number 2 currently is actually the Batman. Matt Reeves is the Batman.
We have we might as well keep talking about it because it's my number 3.
Yeah.
So let's just talk about the Batman all at once.
You know what? This is a movie that I didn't expect to love the way that I was going to love it. I think it's absolutely manages to feel very familiar and based in the comics, but also fresh and unique and deeply strange, which I think is so powerful. I think the weirdness of the movie, the ensemble cast, I think Robert Pattinson is brilliant. Batman, I love the weirdo, new, young Batman. I love not seeing Bruce as the playboy. Like, obviously, when you cast Christian Bale post American Psycho, that is you think that is the only Bruce Wayne. That's so smart. But I'd never really considered this idea of Bruce as the interior, strange, reclusive loner. That is so interesting. And it almost plays on these kind of like Batman Beyond. It almost plays on these different versions of Batman that we've seen. And we talked extensively about that last week, but I love how it takes from the animated stuff, how it takes so deeply from the comics. I think it's so great. I ranked this as my first best movie last week. My top 5's always change, but right now it's solidly there under 89.
Okay, so that is my 3rd. Let's go to your number 3. Your number 3.
My number 3 is Batman Returns. I absolutely love this movie.
Wow.
This is like, for me, I was born in 1988. So for me, this was really like the Batman movie of my childhood that I mostly... Batman 89 was my early memory, and I remember it, and I watched it, but it was very scary. But I was like a goth, like emo kid, and I definitely blame Batman Returns for that. Like that whole aesthetic, I love Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in that movie. I love the Penguin is so brilliant. There's just so much greatness. And you talk about that humor of Keaton, and I think that is so there in that movie. The relationship between him and Selena in that movie is so fun and weird and twisted. I love the production design. That to me is like the Tim Burton aesthetic at its best, where it's this kind of haunting carnival strangeness.
Yeah, Christopher Walken in one of his truly strangest fucking roles of all time.
Also, randomly just invented a new villain. Yeah. Like, that's the absolute tenacity. If you did that now, people would be like, what's wrong with you? But back then, they're like, here's Max Shrek.
Danny DeVito, in a lot of ways, is kind of like the iconic Oswald Cobblepot. And Michelle Pfeiffer, The clip of her on the set of Batman Returns whipping the heads of the mannequins off in full patent leather Catwoman costume, causing the crew to erupt into cheers. It goes semi-viral basically every time there's some Batman something, and an iconic clip, a really fun movie. That's a great pick. For my fourth pick, I am going to pick the animated version of Batman Year One. The animated version of Batman Year One. I think it's, if you want that Batman origin story and you've seen Batman Begins, do yourself a favor, go watch, either pick up Batman Year One, Frank Miller, David Mazzucchelli. It's one of the landmark graphic novels / trades / limited series in all of comics, not just the big two, not just DC. It's great, featuring some of the best art that you will ever see in your entire life. But if you want to watch it with moving pictures, go ahead and watch the animated version. All the writing's there. It's super fun. It's on HBO Max right now. If you have that, it's just one of my favorite Batman stories of all time.
I think it's a really great pick because I think that the DC animated universe as we know it, where they've done these more like standalone movies, has been very popular. But actually, I do think that the animated adaptations are like a secret gem that a lot of people haven't discovered. There's this Dark Knight Returns, like they even did a
Flashpoint. There's a ton of iconic DC stories that if you can't get to a comic shop, you like, and you want to just watch them in animated form, there are a lot of them there. There's a lot of them. What is your fourth?
So I'm really showing my tastes here. So
I love it. It's gonna be Batman Forever.
No, it's actually Batman and Robin, which is my preferred. I love Joel Schumacher. I think he's like an absolute icon. I truly stand by the fact that Batman and Robin is like a brilliant Batman movie. I think the costuming, the production design, that's my favorite version of Gotham. The neon hued giant statues, gothic art deco craziness. It's like reading a really wild Silver Age comic. It's like Dick Sprang come to life. It feels so much like Batman, and I know that is so controversial and people have a lot of feelings about these movies, but I promise you, go and watch that movie and you will have fun. Whatever else you feel about it, you will have fun. Uma Thurman, Poison Ivy, iconic. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Freeze, iconic. Unbelievable. You have everyone. Vivica Fox. That's Mr. Freeze's right-hand man. Like, this is such a fun. Chris O'Donnell and George Clooney having the most like homoerotic, hilarious fun. Like,
we're right. And now Clooney later would besmirch the Batsuit in hilarious fashion, but like this cast is amazing. It's a fun movie.
It's fun.
And though we are very inured to a dark and gritty Batman story these days, the kind of campy, very colorful depiction of Batman was for a long time the tone of Batman. Not just like in the Schumacher movies, but in the comics as well.
Yeah, and in Batman 66, something else I think is really cool about this movie is if you really love Batman, especially if you got into it through the animated stuff or you've read a lot of the comics and collections, Batman and Robin actually has like an unbelievable amount of really deep cut DC characters in it as kind of like set pieces and stuff. Even the person who is integral in Poison Ivy and Bane's creation is the villain from Swamp Thing. And there's lots of fun comic booky things. I just put that movie on and you will have fun. That's my promise to you.
Okay, my final movie is, oh gosh. You know what? It's very tough, but I'm going to say the TV version, Batman 66, the television show, because is it dated? Yes. Does it hold up in the sense of entertaining in the same way that a movie, a modern Batman telling it holds up? No, not really. Does Cesar Romero refuse to shave his mustache and thus have his mustache poking out from below the Joker makeup? Of course he does. That said, Is the Bat computer one of the campiest, weirdest things you've ever seen? Yes. That said, when I was a child, they would rerun that show on like some channel. I want to say like WPIX channel 11 or something like that. Like in the afternoons after I got home for school, and I would just watch it all the time. This was pre-comics. You know, the Hanna-Barbera Justice League and Batman show also was a big part of my kind of like comics introduction before actually buying comics. But like the Batman 66 TV show, I watched a lot of when I was a kid, and I really liked it.
It's actually like one of the most influential Batman storytelling devices of all time as well. Like, who we know as the Rogues Gallery for Batman now is entirely based on that show.
Right.
The Riddler had been in 3 issues before he was on Batman 66. Right. Catwoman had not been in the show, in the comics for 12 years before that show because of the Comics Code of America.
Yeah, it's huge.
It really defined the Riddler, like the way that we see him, and it really defined a lot of the ideas of what we see as Batman, for better and for worse, you know? But I think it's so fun, and especially like Eartha Kitt as Catwoman is just...
Oh, man, the voice will never leave my mind.
Yeah, unbelievable. Like, that's another show where I'm just like, seek it out, you will have fun, and you'll also find out about a lot of weird, deep-cut Batman lore. I rewatched that show quite regularly because it's so fun, and there will still be stuff where I see a villain in an episode and a new antagonist, and I'll be like, wait, that's not from, and I look it up and it's from the comics, and it's from some issue I never heard of, or it got introduced later. It's kind of a treasure trove for Batman fans.
I completely agree. What is your final one?
So my final one is going to be Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah, that's great.
It's, you know, it's arguably
can't beat it.
Objectively the best Batman adaptation of all time. Like, subjectively, this is my list, but I think a lot of people of our generation, of younger generations, of older generations, like, they know the worth and quality of that show. Like, that show changed the way people perceived Batman. It added this noir-hued texture to the story, the retro-futuristic technology, the exploration of Batman and Bruce as character studies, all the different iconic designs, you know, the work of Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, 2 absolute creative icons in the space of Batman. That is one of the most rewatchable cartoons of all time. And if you've never sat down and watched it, you will just be blown away. There's a beautiful HD remaster that's available to stream at the moment. I believe it's on HBO Max. And it is just so bloody good. And
also, much like the X-Men animated series of the 90s, the great thing about Batman the animated series is you get like iconic Batman stories from the entire canon up to that point, done in this really kind of like bite-sized half-hour animated style that is really fun. You will learn a lot about the canon of Batman from watching Batman the Animated Series.
They even have like a Dark Knight Returns, the darkest kind of Batman. They do this like imagined version of that. So that's such a brilliant point. And it's one of the things I love the most about those 90s shows, whether it's X-Men, Spider-Man, this compressed little looks at these incredible arcs that have shaped the nature of these characters. And the animated series is probably the best at it.
Well, that's it. Those are top 5 Batman adaptations. Who do you have? Hit us up at #XRayVision. Welcome to Crime Alley, where today we will rank our top Thomas and Martha Wayne murders of all time. Let the pearls hit the floor. We're leaving the theater because Bruce has an upset tummy, and we are entering through the fire door Crime Alley, where a tragedy will take place again and again and again. This is very exciting, Rosie. I can't wait to do this. So it's been a very rank-heavy episode, but let's do it again, starting with number 3. Rosie, what is your number 3?
Okay, so my number 3 is going to actually be I believe it is in Batman versus Superman. the Thomas and Martha Wayne death in that is so melodramatic.
Yes.
With the pearls hitting the floor.
Let the pearls hit the floor.
Motion. That to me is like, if you're gonna do it that way. I want to see sepia toned. I want to see pearls hitting the floor.
Yes.
I want to see Jeffrey Dean Morgan looking upset. Like that to me is that's almost like the meta text commentary on how these have been done because it's so over the top and I love it.
Fantastic. My number 3 is going to be Batman, The Brave and the Bold, Season 2, Episode 11, Chill of the Night, seen and retold in really chilling animated style. You can absolutely feel the horror on young Bruce Wayne's face. It's one of the best murders of Thomas and Martha Wayne. It is my top 3. Your number 2 murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne.
If you haven't seen this, then I'm about to bless you because it's one of the funniest things that's ever been done in DC.
Yes.
And it goes viral every so often, but if you haven't, go and watch it. I believe it's also on HBO Max. In the very underrated and absolutely hilarious Teen Titans Go to the Movies, part of the plot is that the Teen Titans decide that if no other heroes existed, they would get their own movie. So they go through history and they change people's origin stories. And so they save Batman and his family from walking down Crime Alley. And then later, when they realize they've destroyed the world, we see them go to Crime Alley and push Martha, Thomas, and Bruce into Crime Alley where they get murdered. It is so bleak and so hilarious. And it is just like a really great example of why that show is actually so brilliant because it's the funnest, most in baseball comics fan show. So yeah, you got to watch that one. That is like a laugh out loud every time.
My number 2 is Batman Begins. I think Christopher Nolan does something really smart with his origin story of Bruce Wayne as Batman, which is he makes sure that it's not Thomas Wayne's fault. In many, many, many versions of this murder, Thomas Wayne is like, let's take this shortcut. Let's go. In the Batman Begins version, Bruce gets really scared. And then, in fact, Thomas is being a really, good dad. He's being a great dad. He's like, no, you don't have to, we spent a bundle on these tickets, but I'm fucking rich. We'll just leave. Let's get out of here. And then, instead of, let's take this shortcut to the car through Crime Alley, what happens is they go out the side the fire door. And they just happen to appear into Crime Alley. I think that's one of the most grounded, best versions in the way that it absolves Thomas Wayne of the crime of being an absolute dumbass and causing himself and his, not to victim blame, but listen, Gotham is not a great town and you're walking into an alley. Thomas, you got to know better. And the movie very smartly absolves Thomas Wayne of any kind of irresponsibility in this regard.
So my number 1 is kind of a cheat, but I do think it really counts, which is Batman 89. It's not... So the beginning of Batman 89 uses...
retcon! Retcon energy!
It essentially uses the cultural understanding of Martha and Thomas's murder to introduce us to the movie with a pair of parents and a kid in Gotham, and it looks like they're going to get murdered, and we assume it's Thomas and Martha Wayne and Bruce, but actually they're saved and it's because of Batman. And I just think that is one of the first times that we really saw that conversation between fans and kind of the people making these movies. I still watch that movie and there's probably 30 seconds at the beginning every time when I just think it's Thomas and Martha. It works so well. So we don't really see that. And obviously, like you said, big retcon, spoiler alert, in this version, Jack Napier, the Joker, is the Joe Chill character who it turns out later on killed the parents. So there's a lot of interesting stuff there. But that opening to me is the most effective version we've seen of it. And it's also a really smart subversion because it's not them. So I love that one.
My top murder of Thomas and Martha Wayne is the commercial, or the trailer rather, for Batman Arkham Origins. My least favorite Arkham game, it is the origin of Batman, but the trailer gives me chills. It is really well done in this kind of realistic animated style that melds perfectly into the kind of cutscene style of the game itself. It allows everything to play out on the face of the animated Bruce Wayne. So you start with a close shot of Bruce. You see Martha's hand on his shoulder. You know that his parents are behind him. And then you see the shot go off and the shell of the gun fly down. And it's a quick moment, but it is extremely, extremely impactful because it's one of the first, retellings that said, we know you know what this is, and we don't have to, we're just going to give you a drop of it to let the full emotional impact take hold. I thought it was really artfully done and still like a commercial / trailer that gets me excited for a game that came out like almost 10 years ago.